Hey folks, Kilt-Man here. Kilt-Man at your intergalactic brain-boosting services. How are you all? Hope you're all doing very, very well. Guess what? We've got some more remake news. Oh joy, another classic movie, another genre masterpiece is going to be meddled with and remade for today's culture, for today's mindset. And we all know what that means. To be honest, I don't mind this one so much. I don't, because there's scope for a great retelling. Okay, so what is it? It's Forbidden Planet. I think the title kind of gave it away, didn't it? From 1957, 56, 56, directed by Fred Wilcox, and starring Leslie Nielsen in a rare straight role. Not really, as Commander J.J. Abrams is goofy as all hell. J.J. Abrams, not J.J. Abrams. Otherwise, we'd have more lens flares aboard this ship. Walter Pidgeon plays Dr. Mobius on the planet Altair IV from the great star system of Altair. And he, alone with his daughter, played by the delectable Anne Francis, in a variety of shimmery cosmic dresses which leave little to the imagination. She's wonderful. Live a lovely existence, right out on the bounds, way beyond any earthly can have been before. That's a lie, because he got there with an entire party, an expedition on the Bellerophon, all of whom have died, including his wife. Everyone's died. And J.J. Abrams and his crew at the Starship Cruiser, what's it called again? C-57D, which you see there. I love the fact that in this movie, it's not aliens in a flying saucer, it's humans coming from Earth in a flying saucer, travelling across the cosmos to go and check on Professor Dr. Mobius and all the rest of the crew, to then be told, don't come near here, it's dangerous. I will not be held responsible for what happens to you and your crew if you land here. Well, they're coming in anyway. So they do. They land and they discover this idyllic paradise. And they have Robbie the Robot as their manservant. Yes, Robbie the Robot. Classic android robot creature. And he was in another few movies after this. But a great cinematic invention that we all know and love. Well, what happened to the rest of the crew? They all died. They buried them out there on that hill, including my wife. Well, what happened to them? Their symptoms were unbelievable, inexplicable. They were torn one by one, limb from limb. Well, what did it? I don't know. Something strange, something mysterious, an intangible force. And you and your daughter were immune to this? Now, why was that, Dr. Mobius? And we will, of course, find out why. The old civilization of the planet, the Krell, who lived for eons, millennia, in shining, glistening peace and tranquility, benevolence, ultra-high intelligence as well. They travelled the cosmos way before we were even microbes, and they took specimens from different planets which are on this planet. Hence why there's actually lions and tigers and bears, oh my, in their cosmic back garden. But there's something else there. Monsters from the id, John. Mobius didn't understand the Krell technology. He's too close to it. He didn't understand what they did to themselves. The shining tech of the Krell, which is now deep underground. Miles deep shafts, millions of them all across the terrain. Deep micro fucking computer systems with no wiring, always charging and re-energizing themselves, forever wearing and buzzing and humming and doing their things. And Mobius has tapped into all this, but because he loves the planet, and the Bellerophon crew originally wanted to leave and go back to Earth, he rebelled against that because he boosted his intelligence with the Krell technology. He unleashed his own subconscious monster, which killed the crew. So it's his fault, but that's what happened to the Krell, the fantastic Krell civilization. They, overnight, they reached a point of mass telepathy, but because all their inner demons, their subconscious desires got the better of them, they wiped themselves out completely overnight. My dear Krell, how they couldn't comprehend what they'd unleashed. It's a classic film. Animation, matte paintings, wonderful effects, Eastman colour. Leslie Nielsen trying to be serious, but even with a gun to his head, Leslie Nielsen's still going to be, don't call me Shirley. You can hear there another revolutionary aspect of Forbidden Planet. The experimental electronic score by, well, you don't call it a score because it couldn't get, if you called it a score, you'd have to put it up for an Oscar nomination. But it's not actually a score as we know it. It's sound designs, electronic soundscapes created by the couple Lewis and BB Barron. I have covered this movie a lot. I've reviewed it, I've discussed the music many times on the channel. So now we're going to get a remake. Right. Why am I not up in arms about this? Because this film is ripe for a remake. What it is, in essence, it's a loose adaptation of Shakespeare's The Tempest. Instead of an island, lost island somewhere, it's a distant alien planet. But the characters are all there, albeit sci-fi versions. And it still works damn well. It's thought-provoking, it's exciting, it's got a lot of ideas in there. It's very much of its time, the 50s. Ray guns and blasters, and the animation of the id monster, which is just, it's invisible, but when you hit it with lasers or a force field, you see its outline in jittery, skittery red laser light, and you see its eyes, and it's a big hulking brute, and it does rip people to pieces. You don't see that, but you do hear about it. But you see it wreaking havoc. Did I mention Anne Francis is in this as well? Yeah, I did, didn't I? You've also got Elle Holliman. Elle Holliman plays the cook. He was in Policewoman and many other TV shows. And sadly, he died literally just about 2 or 3 days ago, age 96. So, R.I.P. Elle Holliman. Because he gets Robbie the Robot. Robbie the Robot's got this sort of stomach hatch where you can put anything in there, like star sapphires, adamantine, whatever, and he can reproduce it. You can put a Thanksgiving or Christmas roast dinner, put it in there, and he'll make it. He'll make 30,000 plates of it, and it'll be gorgeous. Or Kentucky bourbon, as cook Elle Holliman says, this is, 100% proof, whatever he says, like, can you make some of this? Would 60 gallons be enough, sir? 60 gallons? Yeah, and of course he gets 60 gallons, all in the bottles with the labels on as well, because Robbie can reproduce all these things. And of course it sort of brings in Asimov's robotic laws, where he can do anything to protect humans, and he will obey every command, except if it's going to lead to his own self-destruction. But he can't kill, or by omission of action, allow to be harmed a human being. It's brilliant. It's absolutely genuine genius, especially when the villain is revealed to be his own creator, Dr. Mobius, who didn't realise by boosting his brain he was reaching the level of the Krell, and his own subconscious was becoming its own monster. Monsters of the id, John. Cheers, y'all. So, who's remaking this? Well, first of all, they've tried to remake this many times over the years. James Cameron, David Twohy, producer Joel Silver enlisted about 2 or 3 different directors at different stages to do a version of this. And at one stage it was going to be, and I quite like the idea of this as well, it never got off the ground. They were going to do a trilogy way before Blumhouse used the ethos of any film we're going to make, it's going to be a trilogy, right before they've even released the first movie. Not knowing it's going to be a success, but we're going to do 3 of these, and then it falls flat on his fucking face. Well, one of Joel Silver's guys said, like, I'll do a trilogy, like a prequel trilogy, showing the Krell's existence, and that'd be fascinating. And it would be very revolutionary back in that day, because this is way before Jim Cameron was coming up with Avatar and a whole alien race of bioluminescent beauty. But it never happened anyway. But now we have a version which is going ahead. I shall give you the details. It's a revisionist remake from Eisner Award-winning comic book creator and screenwriter Brian K. Vaughan, who did Y, The Last Man, Saga, Runaways, Ex Machina, the old comic books, and very, very highly regarded. And seasoned producer, Emma Watts, who was behind iRobot, The Martian, Maze Runner, and others. So there's some pedigree there, especially with heady sci-fi stuff with high concept notions. That's all we know. That is basically it. You know, this hasn't gone any further. I heard about it about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and I thought, well, usually when you get a bit of news about a remake, suddenly more stuff comes out very quickly or nothing comes out. We're in a period where nothing since that initial announcement has come out. But a lot of forums have suddenly picked up on it. And I thought, no, this is worth talking about because Forbidden Planet is an absolute favourite of mine. And it's one that I don't think shouldn't be remade. And let's be specific. Let's be specific about this. Forbidden Planet is a loose adaptation of Shakespeare's The Tempest. This new version will not be a loose adaptation of Shakespeare's The Tempest. It's going to be a remake, a reimagining, a revisionist retooling of Forbidden Planet. So not Shakespeare. That's going to filter in at some point, I'm sure, but they're not basing it on that. The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, is not a remake of the 1951 classic The Thing from Another World by Christian Nyby and Howard Hawks. Christian Nyby and Howard Hawks' The Thing from Another World is an adaptation of John W. Campbell's novella Who Goes There, or Frozen Hell, whichever version you pick up. John Carpenter's movie is an adaptation of that novella as well. It is not, as everyone keeps saying, a remake of the 1951 movie. It's its own thing. Its own thing, hey, of the original story. Forget about the 1951 version. It's not a remake of that. But this will be a remake of Wilcox's movie. But it's going to be vastly different, isn't it? It's going to be hugely different. 1956, all the crew of Starship C-57D from the United Planets cruiser, they're all men. 22 fantastic specimens in age between 19 and 24, and they've been locked up in hyperspace for over a year, and they see you walking around in that little skimpy outfit, Altair, and you know, I have to put more guards on the guards to stop them all from interfering with you. It's very highly sexually charged, that movie. And it's funny as well because it's so dated in their concepts, but obviously it will not be an all-male crew this time around. It just won't be, will it? And even, you know, woke sensibilities, you're going to have transgender, you're going to have lesbian, you're going to have all this. Well, I don't think you will somehow, but you will have a multi-sex crew aboard this. It just makes sense. In the modern day world, it wouldn't just be men, unless, of course, they were meant to be military men. But even that, you'd have women involved in it. So where am I going with that? Doesn't matter. You're going to have a lot more diversity within the crew. And I would expect that without going, oh, they can't do that. Well, they bloody well can. And it would make more sense, to be honest. 1950s, it was very masculine sensibilities, very objectifying a female, which they do. Although she is brilliant in it as well. But we all know what the angle was there. Pure smut. And Robbie the Robot, he's not going to be a big clanking, cumbersome thing, is he? No. He's going to be something like Michael Fassbender. He's going to be a pure AI creation. And maybe you won't even know if he is a robot or not. He's just a manservant or a helper on Mobius's, galactic ranch. But then you'll find out what he genuinely is. And also, taking it out the playbook of Wiggle and Yutani, maybe the Starship actually has, a synthetic on board as well. It's the norm in space, So maybe they've got one, and they will, I know what you are. Robbie, the new Robbie's going, I know what you are as well. Do you want to come behind these boulders and drink some Kentucky bourbon? I'm sorry, miss. I was giving myself a lube job. The film has all of these sort of quotes in it. It's ridiculous. Like, you can't help but guffaw at the innuendo. And they must have known what they were doing as well. So you've got the question about what is Robbie? What's his purpose in this? What was the mission in the first place? Why are they going out there? Will it be like the black hole? where they go out there to the Cygnus to find out what the hell's happened to the crew. You know, like, well, they don't go out there to find that. They are looking for other ships, a deep space probe, you know, with Vincent and Robert Forster and Yvette Mimeo. And I love the black hole, but they find the ghost ship of the Cygnus floating in space on the edge of a big black hole. So it's similar. They definitely got an idea for that movie from Forbidden Planet, with like, that's haunted. There's something about that. Forbidden Planet, it's the planet itself and the people, well, the last people who were there. Black hole, it is the ship, and it is Reinhold himself, you know, Maximilian Schell. And of course, his big robot, also called Maximilian, believe it or not. And it's a great film. Doom and tragedy and psychosis, and Forbidden Planet has all that too. So a modern take is going to have to bring all that in as well, and I think they will. The monster from the Id, well, they wouldn't do it the same sort of way where it was like animation, which I love, by the way. Funnily enough, in the last few years, since I started doing the channel, having reviewed Forbidden Planet on all different formats over the years, for newspaper, for radio, for different websites and forums, I've seen how people's attitudes have changed to it. A lot of people, because it was always, when I was growing up, everyone loved it. It's an absolute classic. But in the last, since I started doing this channel and going on other sort of Monster Kid channels and forums, like, the topic comes up, Forbidden Planet, and they go, oh yeah, it's so dated. I never really liked it when I was a kid. It's so silly and goofy, and like, I'm like, and that's become quite an idea behind people's opinions on the movie. And I'm like, what? I don't get that. That's not how I feel about it. I watched it, loved it back then, and I've loved it ever since. It's a perennial favourite of mine, and it always will be. But a new version, I doubt it'd be goofy. It would take itself very seriously, I would suspect. Probably quite po-faced, in fact. Would the Id monster be far nastier? Well, there's scope there to be nastier. It's meant to tear people limb from limb. And they do find, once it gets unleashed again, when the starship arrives, their crew members are getting ripped apart and they're plastered all over, like, you know, the inside of the ship. You don't see it, but you get told it. But of course, Forbidden Planet is a family movie. You know, it's family fantasy sci-fi fun. So a new version, would a new version take that on board? Would it be like that, or would it be far more serious? Would there be swearing? Would there be some nookie in there? Intergalactic, you know, bumping uglies? I don't know. It could do. Would it be, you know, an R-rated version? It's possible. I wouldn't say no. I wouldn't be closed-minded to that, because I think there's scope for the Forbidden Planet to be a lot more serious and a lot genuinely more terrifying. And this, the original, once the monster from the Id goes on the rampage and it's coming through all the blast shields, and no matter what they do, because Mobius is getting more and more enraged, and the more enraged he is, because he's created this monster, if he can't calm down, that monster's going to get bigger. And your unconscious mind, Mobius, you're giving it the strength it needs to get through that door, you know, to get to us, and it will kill us. It'll kill your daughter, because you can't control it. It's your subconscious mind, Mobius. Fucking hell, oh God. And poor Mobius is like, shit, it's me all along. Oh God, I killed everybody. And he does confront his own Id, literally confronts it. And destruction aplenty. But yeah, I'm not averse to this. Would the score be as experimental as well? You've got all these things to take on board. You could do a very, very strict, serious, hardline sci-fi, ideas-driven version. Again, the visuals would be far more spectacular, one would presume. Although there is a lot of, you know, sort of old school charm to the matte paintings, and the great way that live characters are walking into big matte shots, and it looks great. You know, you're looking at a big matte painting, but you've got real people walking around towards it. Clever for its time. It's really, really audacious. And even now, with the advent of CG and all that, like everything's, oh, it's so glistening and clean and real, but you know it isn't. there's something about the old school approach which your imagination just hits that switch. I know it ain't real, but I'm believing it. And I've never lost that ability to do that. But with CG, and CG can be a great tool, obviously. It can really, really work. I'm not knocking it, but there is a distancing, there's a vacuum between what you're seeing and how people are reacting to something that is not there at all. It's going to be put in after they've done the performance. And you're like, I know how this is done, and it looks great, but there's a distancing that takes place. But there's a lot to play for with a remake of this. So I'm not going to pour scorn on it at all. God alone knows how long this will be in development for. It could get fast-tracked next year. Who the hell knows? But even though they've tried many times before, it's never happened. Got a feeling this one will go ahead. And just a gut feeling. Will it really compare to the original? I think it'll be vastly different. One of the versions beforehand, they said they were going to go retro as well. So they're going to try to do it almost like a Flash Gordon. So it'd be like a throwback. So you'd have outlandish sets and blasters and ray guns and stuff. And a Robbie the Robot, probably in that style of the big cumbersome. He's got he's like the Michelin Man, but made out of metal, And but it's a great design. I do have a figure of Robbie the Robot, but could I find him for the purpose of this video? No, I could not. Otherwise, he'd be there, right there. So you've got a lot of things to think about. The reason why they're going out there, is it an old Krell civilization, or is it something completely different? I don't think they changed that. That's too fundamental. And even the name, the Krell, it conjures up imagery of this sort of shining, scintillating, almost angelic race, highly civilized, highly intellectual, who then reach a plateau where their own subconscious undermines them. Really clever idea. Quite profound, really, and big in scope, because an entire race is wiped out overnight. So I think they would keep that, but you'd see all the technology below decks a lot more. You'd probably see a lot more of the top side, the canyons and the planets. There'd probably be rivers and valleys and all sorts they'd be exploring. A lot more action, one would presume, and a lot more, characters to analyse. So yeah, I'm not averse to this. I love the original movie, as you know, as I've said. There was, of course, an album and a stage show, Return to Forbidden Planet, which was highly comical and romantic. It was just like a pastiche, really, just cashing in. Not exactly Rocky Horror Picture Show, but it was along those lines, a sort of sci-fi take on it. Nowhere near as good. I mean, I wouldn't return to Forbidden Planet. I just stick with the original. But a new version could be a standalone thing based on that version, but going off on its own sort of thing. I think they'd go grittier. I think they'd go more realistic. Casting, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't begin to imagine how they'd do this. But Altair would be the Anne Francis character. They'd have to be very careful on this. And of course, just a father and daughter living alone, millions of light years away from humankind and laws. There'd be a lot of fingers pointing, wouldn't there? There would. You can't really avoid that now with today's climate. So how would they address that? I would like to think that they wouldn't even bother. They would play it as innocent as the original was. It had tons of subtext. It had tons of things going on just underneath, little undercurrents of tension and sort of weariness, distrust. But the biggest threat to Altair is when all these men, these virile space studs arrive, and they're all making a play for her as well. Like, you've got Lieutenant Farman, Space Wolf like Farman, you can't trust him. And they're all after her at some point. They're all putting the moves on her. But it's, with rank you get privileges. Don't worry, Commander, I understand. She chose the best one. And he walks off like, yeah, oh, cheers, Jerry. I'm like, this is Leslie Nielsen. I've got the girl. Because I am Commander after all. It's fucking ridiculous. But it's so, I don't know, naive and cheesy at the same time. And yet endearing. It was from a different time. And yet it's set many, many years in the future. So folks, anyway, let me know what you think about this. A remake of an absolute celebrated masterpiece. No matter how opinions from the fan base has changed over the last few years, which it seems to have done. I don't understand why. But I think this could work. It could be its own thing with, obviously today's effects, a bit more of a serious tone, perhaps. They could do it. They could do it comedic as well. They could do. Hope not. I hope it is. To be different, distance yourself from that original. Play it serious. Play it harder, nastier. I think that would be the way to go for me. Otherwise, why bother? If you're going to do the same thing, there's no point. As I always said, a remake has to take that original idea and go down some different roads. Maybe change up some of the characters and the ideas, and just do something different with it. Take that as a springboard. Maybe have the same conclusion, but it's how you get there. I mean, look at Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Philip Kaufman, I always bang on about this. The most perfect remake. Again, you can say it's a re-adaptation of the original Jack Finney novel. And of course you have the, oh God, Siegel, what's his name? He did all the Desi Harry movies. Oh, I forgot his name now. Doesn't matter. Who directed the original 50s Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Kaufman version is different again, and it subverts certain ideas which are in the original and in the book. So it does its own thing, and it's very much of its time, at the late 70s in San Francisco. It very much follows that sort of pattern of culture. And it's brilliant, of course. So a remake of Forbidden Planet could do a lot of different things, and let's hope it does. Don't just stick to that template. Be your own monster of the id. Do something different. Soundtrack wise, I don't know. They could even reincorporate this. There's nothing dated about this. These old oscillators and circuits and things which they use, all the electronic systems, they just cobbled it together and fired them up. And you've got all these weird warbles and bleeps and undulations. You also get like sort of electronic whale speak in it as well, whale song, which is amazing. But all this weirdness. So you could do that in a new version as well. Or you could just bring in John Carpenter or Tangerine Dream or someone like that. You could just babble on with sound design. Even Hans Zimmer, to be honest, just droning sound design. But I'm up for this. I hope we get some more news relatively soon, because I'm excited about this. It's a big sci-fi classic to be, re-examined. It's not alone. You've got what's his face doing Creature from Black Lagoon, another 1950s but black and white, and it was 3D of course, and I've covered that movie as well. And you have composer turned director Michael Giacchino doing Them, about the giant ants, and I've covered that, I've reviewed that. I think they did a watch party for it as well. So, and again, I don't mind remakes of 50s stuff where you can have different modern sensibilities. Obviously, a higher caliber of actors, maybe, but maybe I'm creating something out of nothing there, aren't I? Because the actors back in these movies were fantastic, but the effects would be today's effects, and you could be nastier, you could be more explicit, especially with Them, with the giant ants, the mandibles ripping people up and all that. It's pretty nasty back in the original, but oh my God, to see that and to see real big ants moving at real ant speed with little human beings being chased, that's something that you could not show back then with the big prop ant dummy things. But it's still great though, and I love it. So there's 3 films. I think the 50s movies can be reimagined. They're unique of their time, but they're very 50s. You can see the limitations of the budget, limitations of the special effects. So they're things which you can bring up to date and make better, you know. I'm not saying it'd be better films, but they beat a new version. And you know, there's plenty of remakes I cannot stand and utterly hate. I'm like, oh, you're doing this. At least not doing a prequel to this. You know, it's definitely a remake of this story. Anyway, comment below, let me know what you think. Forbidden Planet, we're going back there. Only it's not the return to Forbidden Planet, not your musical. Oh my God, what did they do? It's a musical. Like a La La Land thing. Oh God, no, don't do that. Don't do that. They won't do that, will they? They can't, can they? Anyway, folks, I'm out of here. I might, having now just reawoken my own id monster, do a watch party for this. Here I go again and say, oh, I'm going to do this. And then it never happens. But I've got the idea now. We could all sit there and watch Forbidden Planet and revel in that glorious colour vista and Robbie's clankering, ponderous footsteps and the Krell shriek and the blaster beams and the oscillating Krell technology and this fabulous score playing. And of course, Leslie Nielsen trying to be serious as a commander. I like the way that they take the brain boosting device and it shows like how much, you know, your intelligence, your IQ is. And obviously part of the crew, he's got doctors and scientists there, and they're, you know, they're pretty good, but they're nowhere near as high as Dr. Mobius. And they're like, Commander J.J. Adams, you know, Leslie Nielsen, oh, I want to have a go, and it just goes nowhere. And you go, don't worry, you know, a commander just needs a good loud voice, huh? You know, how can I make a picture there? Don't do it. The Bellerophon commander tried it because you can create a 3D image of what's in their mind at the time, but you've got to train yourself to do it. And he goes, I want to make a picture there like you did. And he said, no, it was instantly fatal to the commander of the Bellerophon. Ah, but you were immune to this as well. No, the first time I tried it, I was in a coma for 24 hours. But I realized when I woke up that I permanently boosted my intelligence by 200%, you know, permanently. And I would slowly, incrementally grow my huge brain to Krell proportions. You might actually see the Krell. You don't see the Krell in the original movie. The only reference you get to it, it says, no, you hear music. This is music made by Krell musicians a millennia ago. And you hear a bit of this, which sounds like this stuff, to be honest. And which is convenient, is it not? And so what they look like? Well, no record of their physical appearance has survived. But I think, look at this big, the corridors are these big sort of almost semi-hexagonal archways, but they're big. You know, I think you should look at these archways like in comparison to our own doorways. So our doorways are like that to let a human bipedal creature walk through. So these are big things like that. So what are they, like fucking lopsided tanks? But it's open to your imagination, and I love that. There's no definitive answers. Anyway, I'm definitely out of here now. Folks, I have been always shall I Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime, and it's ever, I don't know, monster from the id, terrifying, burn through doors, and Robbie the Robot's going to give me, if I said to him, can you make me some whiskey? I'd have to have whiskey in the first place to say, can you make some whiskey? But I haven't got any whiskey. I'd have to give him one of these, and I have like 80,000 cans of Foster's. Shit. In between time. So folks, please keep it Celtic, keep it Celtic. I'm going to see you all. Man does not behold the face of the Gorgon and live.